ZIGZAG and One, a place where we honestly discuss how to embrace the zigs and the zags in our crazy lives. Running away is not an option. Living in defeat is not an option. Instead, learning how to keep moving forward is what we'll do together, one nugget of wisdom at a time. Your host is Melanie Brown. She's navigated a few zigs and zags in her life with the determination to never give up. Expect great stories and lots of laughs. Are you ready? Let's do it.
Hello, friends. Welcome to this episode of the ZIGZAG and One podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Brown. Each year on this Holocaust Remembrance Day, I see a picture of the Auschwitz concentration camp on social media, and it has these words: if we held a moment of silence for each victim of the Holocaust, we would be silent for 11 and a half years. I don't know about you, but that thought is staggering to me. It does more than take my breath away. Honestly, I think of not only those who were brutally killed because of their race and their religious beliefs, but I also think of the family members who were liberated and then had to build new lives for themselves. My guest today, Eva Aigner, is a Holocaust survivor. I can assure you she is taking time today to remember her father, who can be counted among the 6 million lives lost. At 83, she's strong and healthy and full of life. And she and her husband, Les, who is also a Holocaust survivor, share their experiences at schools and events across the country. And this is why: so they can dispel the lies that say the Holocaust never happened. Her experiences, to be honest, are really heartbreaking to hear. But I believe hearing what she experienced at the hands of the Nazis will help us to never forget. Before I share my interview with her, I want to honor her request to tell you that yes, this is her story. But she'd rather you refer to what she shares as her experiences, which is a proven part of history. Some could say a story is made up, and Miss Eva wants to assure you that she nor any of the other Holocaust survivors made up the atrocities, the humiliation, and even the degradation the Jewish people experienced and endured during the Holocaust. It happened, and we must remember. Because of the adult content we'll be discussing today, please make sure young ears are not listening with you. However, I do believe those that are 12 and older should listen, as hearing Miss Eva share her experiences will add invaluable insight to their understanding of the Holocaust. Please join my conversation with Miss Eva Aigner. On this Holocaust Remembrance Day, we remember the 6 million Jews who perished in the Holocaust. And today, I am honored to speak to a Holocaust survivor named Eva Aigner. Thank you for joining me today, Miss Eva.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, your time. I'm very honored to be here, especially on a special day, which is honoring of the lives of the people who were killed during the Holocaust.
Yes.
And I just want to add to you that beside the 6 million Jews, I like to honor also the 5 million others who were also discriminated and killed because of their differences.
I would agree with you. I think that is a very important point to make. I believe it's very important to remember the atrocities done to the Jewish people so that we won't repeat it. And stories like yours are what help us remember. So will you tell me about your family life when you were a young child?
When I was born in a very difficult time, in Europe in 1937, and by 1939, the Nazi IDs were pretty rampant all through Europe. So the first thing that happened to my family, my father's business license was taken away, who was a hat maker, and I was just a small child yet, 2 years old. I had a sister who was 8 years older, and my mom was a homemaker, and we had a very happy family life. But all this got interrupted when he lost his business license due to our religion. They said Jews could no more own businesses. And he decided to join some of his brothers who lived in Budapest, Hungary, because through correspondence with them, they said, we don't have such laws here. Why don't you move your family to Budapest?
Okay, and so how old were you when you moved to Budapest?
I was a 2-year-old child, and my sister was 10.
Okay, so I know that at 2, you're much too young to know anything about the conditions, but what was life like during that time period for your family? How were the Jews treated in Hungary?
Everything seemed to be okay until about 1942. And then all of a sudden, the anti-Semitism became very rampant, and the Nazi IDs also started to arrive to Hungary. So when we lived in Budapest, my father couldn't get a business license anymore, but he ended up working for somebody. But then pretty soon, people were not even hiring people who had the Jewish religion because of all these anti-Semitic IDs. So life was difficult for my family because my father had a very hard time to provide for all of us. And
when you went to school, tell me about how you were treated by the other students.
In 1943, I started first grade, and I was going to school for about 3 months. Loved school, when one day the teacher said, Jewish children, stand up. And it was 6 or 7 of us in this class. And we were told that we are not allowed to say the Hungarian national prayer with the students, with the rest of the students, front of the flag, because of our religion. Well, I was 6 years old. I did not understand why I am different than anybody else.
Of course not. You were much too young.
It was very painful. And I remember going home and crying and telling my mom that what happened. And she put me on her lap and she said, I'm so sorry you had to experience this, but now this is what's happening here, and this is the law. We are good people. We are God-loving people. We are hardworking people. And I wish I could help you. I will try to protect you, but that's all I can do.
Wow. So take me forward the next few years and how things really impacted your family. And the name of our show is ZIGZAG in One. And so the struggles that you face, I liken to zigzags that we face. And I know from your story that you faced quite a lot of zigzags over the next few years. So if you will, walk us through that.
Pretty soon we were not able to go to school. Our father was indicted in the forced labor camp where he was killed and he never returned.
How old were you when he was taken away?
The last time I saw my father was in 1943, and I was 6 years old. And it's interesting enough how much you remember of these things, how they stay with you even when you are a child.
Yes.
People think, how can you remember? But when you have tragic situations, which is so hard to bear, you remember.
Yes. And so it was just your sister and you and your mom
left,
right. And what happened then?
All of a sudden, they started to push people into places together, the Jewish people, And the building where we lived was in the Jewish district. And as it turned out to be, it became one of the houses which was so-called a marked house. And they had a huge yellow star on the front of the building. And they started to push in more families. And our small apartment, which was 2 bedrooms and 1 room and a kitchen and a bath, they pushed in 4 more families. So you can imagine, we thought we don't have enough room, and it was quite difficult. But we didn't realize that this time was really a good time yet, because not much after that, we were taken into the Ghetto area, which was about a 20-block area in Budapest. And it was surrounded with barbed wire and some brick walls. They pushed us into these old apartment buildings, which was emptied from the general population. And we were 20 to 30 people sometime in one room.
Oh, my goodness.
So when we thought that we were so crowded in our own place, we had plenty of room with those few families, comparing to what happened in the ghetto with us.
Tell me about the conditions in the ghetto. I've read things, but you having been there, tell me how you and your family and the others that were in the apartment were treated by the soldiers and the guards that were there.
Well, we had a very difficult time because sometimes we didn't even have running water or electricity. So that itself was, you can imagine, that many people together. Sickness was very rampant.
Yes.
We had, the food was very much rationed. We had to line up for feeding a couple of times a day. And we just got a little meager soup or very little nourishment. So people, of course, got sicker. And mind you, in the ghetto, it was mostly children, women, old people, and the sick, because all the able-bodied men was taken to the forced labor camps to work for the war machinery. So being in that situation and not having enough nourishment, not having enough water to clean ourselves, life was very difficult. And we were living in these conditions, and the Hungarian Atrocities people, which is similar like the Nazi party was in Germany at that time, they were very cruel and they treated us very cruelly. People were beaten up if they didn't stand straight enough in the line or if they didn't do what they were told. Because I was so little, we had a little pan for each of us to go off, like a little pot for the food. And so many times they ran out of the food by the time it was our turn. My mom taught me how to get, being so little, front of the line, so at least I could get one pot full of food. And many times we had that one pot full of meager soup, but we shared, the 3 of us.
Oh, it's as you're describing this, my heart just aches because I've read about these things, but hearing you tell it, it just takes it to a completely different place for me. And I am so, so sorry that this happened to you, especially at such a young age. So I know from your story that you were there for a while. How long were you there before a situation happened with your mother?
We were there for about 4 months when one day the Hungarian militiamen came through the Aerocross and woke us up in the middle of the night. And they started to collect the still able-bodied people. And my mom was in her 30s, late 30s that time, and they also picked her out. So by that time, my sister was 15, and I was 7.
Mm-hmm.
And we already lost our father, and our mother was taken away from us. So you can imagine how we felt, how devastated that felt that our mother, who was our total sole caretaker, was left. And my sister, who was 15, just stepped up to the plate and became my mother. And she really watched for me and took so good care of me, the best we could under the circumstances. And we were living for about another month in this kind of a condition, when one night the Hungarian militiamen woke us up and they said, and it was by that time, it was December, it was a very cold, frozen night. And they told us we are going on a march, but they didn't tell us where. So luckily, my sister grabbed the one and only blanket we had, and that's what we used to share with my mom, the three of us. And we never heard anything what happened to our mom in the meanwhile. And we were taken down to the riverfront of the Danube, which we didn't know at the time exactly what's happening. We just were hearing gunshots all the time. So what the Hungarian Nazis did, because it was getting closer to the end of the war, that night after night, they emptied the ghetto, different sections, and they took 50 to 75 people at a time, and they told them to remove their shoes, and they shot them into the river.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was, like I said, the sick, the old, the children, and some women. And while we were standing there and crying in this line, some miracle happened. And I have to tell you that any survivor who you have a chance to talk to in your life, they will tell you their survivor was a miracle. Because we really absolutely had no control over our life.
Yes, ma'am.
My mom escaped while she was taken to other camps. And I also have to say there were some righteous people too. She was captured by a German soldier who was not a Nazi, was indicted into the war when she escaped from the train. And luckily, my mother spoke German, and I told this man, I want to get back to my children. If I don't get back, they will be not surviving this war, and my husband is already killed. And this man was a feeling man and let her go, and she was hiding for several days in the woods and walked back. And when she got back sneak back into the ghetto, find out that our section was taken down to the riverfront.
Oh my goodness, the timing.
She took herself down to the riverfront, and when I say it's a miracle, she recognized my sister's crying voice in the line.
Wow.
The only thing my mom had left was her wedding ring from our past life, and she pulled off her ring and bribed the guard to let these kids back into the ghetto. And he said, he took the guard, and yes, he said, you cannot have children wandering around the city, and we were sent back to the ghetto. And just 3 weeks after that, on January 18th, the Budapest ghetto was liberated by Russian troops. And they opened the gates, and they told us we are free to go. But nobody wanted to believe it. We had so many lies we had to live through. By that time, I had dysentery. I was very sick. I couldn't walk. So my mom and my sister took turns. We got back to our apartment, and it was totally ransacked. We didn't have a stick of furniture or a pillow or a blanket to lay down on. Wow. But my mom is my hero. She put my sister and myself on her lap, and she said, children, listen to me. We lost so much. We lost our family. We lost our belongings, but we have each other. And you have to promise me that you make the best out of your life you can. And her and her words stayed with me forever.
She is an incredibly brave woman. I am in awe hearing you tell your story. What is her name?
Her name is Gisela.
Beautiful.
And she passed away in 1991. I was able to bring her out to the United States. Unfortunately, when you have experiences like that, and she never wanted to talk about the Holocaust after this incident, ever. She just wanted to concentrate on life. But
Yes.
you know, the human mind is different because no matter what you want to do, sometimes things come back to haunt you. And for her older years, she came down with Alzheimer's, and she constantly was trying to gather food for her starving children.
Oh.
And she was looking for her children. And that broke my heart.
That breaks my heart, you saying that. Oh, what such a brave woman. Thank you for sharing that part. I know just hearing you talk about it, I'm imagining it in my head, and I just can't think about the trauma that you and your sister at such a young age went through to see all of the terror and the hate and the violence that was inflicted upon you and your family and your friends. And I'm so sorry that this happened to you. But there is a good zigzag in your story in that you met your husband. Tell me about that.
So I was 18 years old, and I just started my first job. And a gentleman said to me, you know, I would like to have my wife meet you because we don't have any children. And, he always wanted to, I sort of was a little bit concerned, because he was so nice and he always sent flowers or pastries. So I was a little bit concerned, but I finally gave in and went to meet his wife on one Sunday afternoon, which was exactly the 11th of March in 1956. He never told me what he had in mind to introduce somebody to me.
He's sneaky.
Yes. So I just walked up on those steps, and he opened the door. And then all of a sudden, this young man is coming up behind me. And so they introduced him to me. And it was a very distant relation to my husband. And, my husband is also a survivor. He went through 4 camps. He's a survivor of Auschwitz, Landsberg, Kaufering, and Dachau. He was liberated in Dachau on April 29, 1945, as a 15-year-old child.
Mm.
He was 75 pounds of walking skeleton.
My goodness.
But I didn't know all this. I just saw this very nice young man, and they started to talk to us. They introduced us, but it was very awkward, I didn't know what to expect. So he invited me out for coffee, and I just jumped at the chance. And I guess our courting only lasted 59 days because we got married after that.
Wow.
And this year, on the 9th of May, we'll be married for 64 years.
Wow, that is incredibly special.
Thank you. And he's just a wonderful person. I think we help to heal each other, because for many years we could not speak about the horror, what we went through, to anybody. We kept it to ourselves. We didn't share it with friends. A lot of people never knew we were survivors.
I actually saw that as part of your story, and I found that to be very interesting. And I love that you said that you healed together. That's beautiful. So you waited 50 years before you started talking about it. What gave you the courage to do it then?
Well, we first spoke out in 1989, simply because they were headlines even in the Oregonian and all over that some people denies that the Holocaust ever happened. But
Yes, I've read that.
That made us so angry, and we never spoke to anybody about our experiences. But that was so upsetting that how could people say that? It's a historical event, which is also in it should be more about it, but it's in the history books. How could people deny that? This is part of history. And so we find out there was a Oregon Holocaust Resource Center, and we went to their meeting, and they had a speakers bureau, and we decided we just can't stay silent anymore. We have to share what happened to us as children in order to teach others what hatred and discrimination can do to innocent lives.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was, I think, the starting point. And when we started to speak out, not only we helped others to understand how horrible to do this to another human being for their differences, but also by doing this work, what we so believed in, it was helping us to heal, to be able to speak about it. And sometimes I think back, and I think because my mom kept so silent and kept everything to herself, that was part of the reason too that she never could heal a little bit. We will never forget what happened to us. And I never want to forget it, because this is something what made me as who I am, and it's part of my life. But it really helped me to heal, to know that from all these horrible atrocities, we came forward and did so much for society.
I would agree with that.
And I think by helping others, you're helping yourself.
Yes, that's very true. So tell me something that after all of these years that you learned about others or about yourself by you going through such a horrific experience. Is there anything that you've learned that you would be willing to share?
Yes, I learned a lot. First of all, I learned that we are all God's children and we are all human beings. We are put to this earth for some reason. And everybody has a right to live their life. And as long as somebody doesn't hurt you, doesn't do anything which you feel that you are threatened by, why hate somebody just for hate? I also learned that hate sometimes is passed on from generation to generation. And I can tell you one perfect example for that. One time we were sent to Ashland, Oregon, which is a very nice little town, to speak in a school. And the students were given the assignment to read the diary of Anne Frank.
Yes. And
then they had to give a book report to the teacher. This one student didn't write a report, just put on, "I hate Jews." And the teacher was very smart. She called in this child to her office. He says, "Tell me, why do you hate Jews? Do you know any Jewish people?" "No, I never met anybody who is Jewish." "So why do you hate, if you never met anybody and nobody did anything to you, why do you hate these people?" "Because my parents told me so, and my grandparents."
Oh my goodness. That's just terrible to hear. And so that's kind of hate in a young person.
You just paint their mind with something awful. So this teacher was a good educator and knew that she had to do something, and we were invited to speak over there. I never find out who was the child. She didn't reveal who wrote this book report. But we had a presentation, And it's like the good Lord planned it. This lady jumps up when our presentation is done and says, my uncle came back and he was a liberator of Daha, an American soldier. And he says, what Mr. and Mrs. Aigner just told you about what happened to the Holocaust, it's all true, because I still have pictures what he took in the camps.
Wow.
And it was amazing. A lot of parents also came to this school assembly, and we were there, kept for hours. Even after the presentation, they were asking questions. So what I'm saying is that you could see that these kids, nobody born to hate. They are learning it from someplace.
Yes, sadly.
It's terrible.
Yes.
We also did a lot of other work. You know, I was the co-chair of building the Oregon Holocaust Memorial, which I keep saying it was one of the biggest accomplishment of my life beside raising our children.
That's wonderful.
Because we are so thankful, you know, we lost so much family that life goes on, and we have 2 wonderful children, and you know one of them, and 4 grandsons and a great-grandchild. So life goes on, and I'm so thankful. We are so thankful for every single day. And I'm thankful that we got to this point that we could come out and talk about our life.
Well, and I am thankful because we need to hear stories like yours, again, so that we can remember and we can understand what happens when we move towards hate and violence against others for seemingly ridiculous reasons. And I am just extremely thankful for your willingness to share your story. And I wasn't aware that we were going to get to talk about your husband and his story. So I'm thankful that you were sharing that as well today. So before we finish, will you talk about your one takeaway?
My takeaway is that a person is stronger than we think. Because of all what we went through, I'm still here, and I was able to live a happy family life because we realize that how precious life is and how sometimes you can lose it so quickly. And I think that also gave us more appreciation and tremendous love of family, because once you lose so much loved family members, so many loved family members like we did, you realize that family and good friends are really the salt of life.
Beautifully said. Miss Eva, thank you so very much. It has been such an honor to talk to you today and to hear your story and to talk about the struggles that you faced, the zigzags that you faced, but how you fought to overcome, especially your mom. Wow, that part is just amazing. Thanks to her that you are here and that you have a family to carry on your generation and beyond, and that we may always remember the Holocaust so that we don't ever repeat that again. So thank you, Miss Eva.
And thank you for your interview and putting on our message. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So when life zigs and zags, and you know it will, remember how sharing your story is a powerful message to others that they too are strong and can overcome their struggles. Join me on April 28th when I speak to Sue Reynolds about finding the athlete inside. On this Holocaust Remembrance Day, may I ask you to join me in honoring the millions of lives lost, as well as the survivors, by sharing this episode on your social media? What better way to declare your belief that the Holocaust did happen than by inviting your friends and followers to hear Miss Eva, a Holocaust survivor, tell her firsthand account of her experiences. May we remember so it will never happen again. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to you joining me again on the next episode. Until then, friends, keep moving forward.